After the abortion, all I could think about was, when can we have kids again? And if you haven't seen my previous video about my first pregnancy, you can click on the link below. Right now, it's been almost 3 years. We make a little bit more money than we used to. We are still living with my parents. So on the one hand, I think about, when will I ever be able to have children again? And on the other hand, I think about, will I bring my children into a worse situation than mine? And that's because in my mind, I imagine my grandparents, one had 5 kids and the other had 8 kids, and they had their own homes probably around early to mid 20s. Then you look at my parents, who had me and my brother both when they were in their late 20s, early 30s, was when they had their house. I'm 30 years old right now, turning 31 this year, and I can't afford to have kids or have a house. Maybe if Mike and I save up until we're 35, then possibly by then we'll be better off. So I think, okay, what about my children? Will they not be able to have children of their own and buy a house until they're 40? I felt really lost, and I didn't know my purpose in life. I no longer had any motivation or drive, and I'll probably talk about my depression and anxiety in another video. Mike could see that some days I felt really empty inside, and every now and then I would ask him, when can we try again? I thought that he'd possibly be done with classes by the end of summer session, but I kept pestering him because I actually was, I'm not that superstitious, but I was reading about the Year of the Dog Chinese horoscope, and that a baby dog would actually be beneficial for the snake and rabbit to have better communication. So I asked if we could try in December 2017. Since having a baby takes 10 months, I thought that maybe the baby would be out by the time he finished school. I'd been using the Ovia app to track my cycle, and I was also using a thermometer to track my basal body temperature to see if it was rising or dropping, to see when I actually ovulate. And in March, I got really excited because after the ovulation period, my basal body temperature wasn't dropping. It was actually staying really high. It kept going higher. So I actually tested on cycle day 35, which was a day that I would probably normally would have gotten my period. It was Saturday, March 10th, and I tested positive. I normally have Fridays and Saturdays off of work, so I actually scheduled my doctor's appointment for the following Friday on March 16th. I was kind of in disbelief and really excited. I actually tested myself every morning just to make sure that it was always positive. But what happened was that the positive line was actually getting fainter and fainter. It was fading. So I got really, really worried, and I started getting paranoid. At that point, I actually never planned to tell anyone I was pregnant until after the first trimester, because I know things can happen, and I had thought about how to surprise Mike about the pregnancy, so I didn't want him to know yet either until I was really sure. But I was just way too stressed out and worried about it, and so I told Mike, and I told 2 of my closest friends. They kind of reassured me, just wait for your appointment with your doctor. I'd actually regretted telling one of my coworkers, because she was shadowing me at the time and we were just talking, and I kind of let it slip that I was pregnant. And I told her that I didn't tell anyone else in the office because, the whole first trimester thing. And she understood that. And it was the day before my appointment that at work I started cramping. And when I went to the bathroom, I saw that I was spotting. And I just remember being in the bathroom stall thinking, God, please, I don't want you to take this away from me. I want to keep my baby. And I continued to bleed until I got home. And when I showered was when I saw a blood clot, and I actually caught it in my hands. And at that point, I felt like I just knew. I took a picture of it because I thought that maybe the doctor would want to see it, or maybe they could confirm that this was a miscarriage. And then after that, I said my goodbye and I let it go down the drain. The next day at my appointment, I told a doctor that I tested positive and that I thought that I miscarried. And when she took a look, she said that cervix still looked like it was closed, and that was a good sign, and that blood that was there looked darker, and so that was more of an indicator of old blood, maybe residual blood from the implantation. And so she told me to take a blood test and to continue taking blood tests to confirm the pregnancy. I tried to feel hopeful. I was looking for success stories of women who had heavy spotting but was still pregnant, or women that had low HCG levels that were still pregnant as well. Because from that first blood test, I was maybe 5 weeks and 5 days along, and I was only at 73, which is considered pretty low. But I've read stories of other women who did have low HCG levels, and as long as it kept doubling and kept increasing, that they were actually still pregnant. I was, hoping and praying that it would go up for the next one. On March 21st, it had dropped down to 32. And my daughter had also recommended for me to take an ultrasound because she wanted to make sure that all the residual tissue had already come out and that I'd be okay. But I was looking at the cost of an ultrasound and it would have costed $500. And to me, it wasn't worth it. I kept thinking that it'd be heartbreaking to go to the doctor just to confirm that there was nothing in there. And I also put a poll on the OVIA community to see what other people thought and what they did. And 58% were actually saying, I think you had a natural miscarriage and you shouldn't worry about it. And 42% were recommending that I get an ultrasound anyway, just to make sure. Since I had to continue taking the blood test anyways, that's the route I took. I didn't do an ultrasound. I just kept going every week to make sure that the numbers went down. On March 30th, I was at 18. Then April 6th, I was at 7. And then finally, the week after, I was back down to normal. I had a lot of trouble dealing with the miscarriage. I kept thinking, yeah, I knew it. It's a sign. Because I aborted my twins, I'm being punished right now. And I'm not destined to have any more children, so I'm just going to continue miscarrying. At first, Mike was sad about the miscarriage, and then he kind of opened up and said that he probably wasn't ready because at the time we actually realized he was missing some GE classes and it'd actually take longer for him to graduate. He was kind of imagining the worst. He was thinking about Bernadette from Big Bang Theory and how she was on bed rest and was constantly yelling at people and needing help. He felt that he really wanted to be there during my pregnancy. And if he was focused on school and stressed out about work and school, because he does both full time, that he wouldn't have time to care for me. Sure, I can understand that. It makes sense. And so I thought, okay, maybe God took away the baby because he knew how Mike was thinking and feeling. Or at least I hope so. There was one day that we sat together and really grieved our children. We had a discussion, and I told him I felt like I could find a little bit of peace because I read somewhere that God is watching over our unborn children and that we would be reunited with them one day. I hope that this applies to abortions and miscarriages. I know that Mike isn't a believer, and what he thinks is that his father is watching over our children. And so, because our children are so important to us, we actually gave them names. And, at the time, they were too young for us to know their gender, and so we went with gender neutral names. The twins are Jordan and Jamie, and the most recent baby is Morgan. And we really hope one day that we'll be reunited again. For now, I took some time off work because I kept breaking down and crying. When I worked on weekends, I was alone in the office and I just couldn't handle it. And also the fact that one of my coworkers, who I'm really happy for, she gave birth in April. And it kind of just made me sad that I wasn't pregnant anymore. And at the time, I also stopped working out when I found out I was pregnant. And I was actually getting a lot of lower back pain and shoulder pain. Not really shoulder, but like the pectoralis minor. And so I decided to take time off work just to work on myself and find a better therapist because I was having suicidal thoughts at the time. I had a long commute to work. On my days, I would just grip the wheel really hard, and my thoughts would just go over and over, like all my mistakes and all these negative thoughts. And I would think about driving into the freeway wall or driving off the overpass. I just wanted to die because I felt like if I wasn't going to have children again in the future, that I just wanted to be with the children that I lost. I know that many women experience multiple miscarriages before being successful. For me, though, I feel like I would take it personally because I had the abortion. I feel like if I continue to miscarry, that it's a sign that I'm not supposed to have children, that I'm not destined or meant to have children anymore. If you Google it, miscarriages are pretty common. According to the March of Dimes, 50% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage, and that is often before a woman even misses her period or knows that she's pregnant. About 15 to 25% of recognized pregnancies will end in miscarriage, and more than 80% of miscarriages happen during the first trimester. I had told both my mom and godmom that I was pregnant and that I miscarried. For my godmom, her reaction was just, "It's fine, it's okay, you can try again." My mom, her reaction was, "What'd you do? You know you can't lift things, right? You know you shouldn't exercise. What did the doctor say?" But doctors can't tell you why you miscarried. You'll never know. Was it something I did? Was it something I ate? Probably not. Most likely it was just a chromosomal issue, and so it couldn't develop any further. No matter what I explained, it just seemed that it was always my fault regardless, and now she just is upset that she missed out on 3 grandchildren. If you recently went through a miscarriage, I do apologize that my video isn't really as uplifting as others who continue to try and have hope and succeeded in having a baby after. But I guess the reason why I'm sharing my story is that I want to know if there's anyone out there who feels the same way that I do. Someone who had an abortion and then miscarried. How do you feel better? Did you keep trying? Yeah. Thanks for watching and best wishes to you all.